Hey guys, it's KITHERA here, back at it again with another video of me reacting to And Quiet Flows the Dawn, this Russian book by Mikhail Sholokhov. Really excited to get into this. This is a very eventful chapter, so I'm going to cover everything that we have here. I'm not going to be slow with it. Let's just get right into it. So for those of you who are new to the channel or new to this in general, I've never read this book before. I just read chapter 3. And I'm basically doing a blind reading of this. I don't know much about this book other than like the historical context, since I'm just like really into history and whatnot, but other than that, I know nothing about this book, and so that's why I'm excited to read this with you guys. You can read along with me, you can, comment down below anything that you'd like to share. I guess I will have to give a spoiler warning here because, I guess there is a spoiler. I'm reading the whole book, so like, the whole thing is a spoiler. But feel free to just read along with me. Feel free to just, use this as like a summary or whatever. Yeah, let's just get straight into it. So the opening scene is at the Melakhov family house, where Pyotr and Daria are there, taking care of their baby. You get a pretty good scene of what Cossack family life is like, and they're right upon the Don River, and Gregor is tasked with waking up the neighbor, who, as a reminder, Gregor is actually, like, flirting, or I guess, it's sort of implied that he's taking it a bit further than flirting, with the neighbor's wife. So he's tasked with doing that, and I think that kind of sets up, as we're about to see, some sort of tension that's about to happen between the two. So later on, after Gregor wakes up the neighbors, who are Aksinia and Stepan, it kind of cuts forward, and we see that Pyotr, the older brother of Gregor, is being sent off to training, and same with Stepan. I guess they're about sort of the same age. And so, with this, Stepan being the neighbor, with this being said, this also means that Aksinia's husband is going off to war, and Gregor has more time to, I guess, spend with Aksinia. And so, that's sort of talked about in the next few pages. But we get this scene with, I think this is definitely setting up the main protagonists of the story as Gregor and Aksinia, and we get some sort of talk from Aksinia about how unhappy she is with being married to her husband, Stepan. So the story also sets up, it seems to set up Gregor and Aksinia being the sort of main characters. I think that this story is kind of setting up to be like some sort of love story, I'm pretty sure. And so what it's kind of set up is Aksinia seems to be complacent in her marriage, or not really complacent, more so almost like she's just kind of accepted her fate, as, that's kind of what she's into already. And she even says to Gregor, you're still young, don't get married, and when asked why not, she says, nothing but sorrow. And so, as this is already, as this is going on, Gregor then asks, he doesn't ask, he says, I have no desire to get married, someone loves me already as I am, and then he sort of starts to imply as he's talking that he really likes Aksinia and wants to marry her even though Aksinia is already married. And we get more of this scene with, I guess they're on sort of a cliffside, so Gregor isn't really letting her pass. He's kind of just teasing her with, they were kind of like putting up the horses or whatever they're going to do. It wasn't really clear. But, yeah, we sort of get this pretty good scene that is definitely more foreshadowing of, what's later to come. And so later on, they return back to the, I guess the main building in the farm, and Pyotr has already gone off, and so then Stepan is also going off as well as they're heading to training, and they wave them goodbye, yeah, they keep walking down the road, and Gregor and Aksinia now have more time to spend with each other. So then at this point, it cuts to another scene where it's raining, and we're introduced to another character who's the same age as the daughter in the Melakhov family, as Dunya. So Dunya is watching Mishka basically playing in the rain, and in the beginning it starts to talk about how it's not just an average rainstorm, it seems to be a thunderstorm, and it seems to be quite aggressively brewing in the east. And so I interpreted this scene as, since this scene happens like right after Stepan leaves his wife off to war, I interpreted this as, since Aksinia is left all alone with Gregor, that it's definitely foreshadowing of something going to happen, not only between Gregor and Aksinia, but probably something that's going to result in definitely a aggression between Gregor and Stepan. And this is sort of, ties into the whole, I guess, motif with the thunderstorm definitely being a symbol, or, sort of an occurrence. When that happens, subsequent to something, it's sort of like an omen that something bad is going to happen. There's also this scene where Dunya is looking at Mishka play in the rain, and she knows that she can't because she'd get her clothes dirty, and her parents would be mad at her. And also in the scene, it kind of like zooms in on her at this one, and I kind of interpreted this one as it sort of represents, I think, as this book talks about, that the Cossacks have sort of this free and roaming spirit of, going wherever they can, and we definitely see more of that in later scenes, where we have them like literally on horses all the time, going everywhere on the steppe. And so I think it's representative of how the Cossack spirit really desires to be free. Free in the sense that, playing in the rain, getting dirty, getting muddy, and all that. The type of free that is freedom with consequences. And we're all there for the consequences. And so it's a very small scene, but I think it's representative of what this whole book is sort of emphasizing about the Russian Cossacks. So after this, we get a scene where, even though it's raining outside, they have to chase this cat back into the yard, and then the Milokhov family decides to go out fishing, and they decide to round up all the neighbors as well, including Aksinia and another neighbor named Mlaksha Frolova, and so they're basically gathering all of them to basically go fish out while it's raining, which I thought was interesting. And on this fishing trip, things are not going well. They're so instead of like using like the reel and string, they are going out like into the Don River with like nets and all that, and they're not having a good time. It's raining. The Don is flowing like really quickly, and they get kind of dragged quite a lot. Like Gregor, I think, even loses his grip sometimes, and it even says that the bottom of the Don is very slippery, so he slips a few times, and it really talks about like how free flowing that the Don is at this time while it's raining. And so Aksinia and Gregor are swept up by the current, and they have just a lot of trouble trying to get anywhere, and they're basically almost about to die. And there's this moment when Gregor shouts for Aksinia, and she doesn't answer back, and so he just presumes that she's dead for a few moments. But they eventually do reconnect after a few months. They grab a hold of each other. Gregor disentangles the net because they tend to get very disentangled if if you're being knocked around on the river quite a lot holding it. And so he even says, so Gregor says, I was knocked against the bank. Sorry. Aksinia says, I was knocked against the bank. I went out of my mind. I was frightened to death. I thought you were drowned. So this whole experience definitely bonds Gregor and Aksinia closer to each other. It's always the moments, especially in literature as well, that when two characters are sort of put into life or death situations, this is like a really big sort of bonding sort of thing for them. Usually when humans are up against sort of a grave threat together and they have to fight together to fight against it, this is usually a very important moment in friendship, in bonding, just sort of that sort of thing. And I think this really emphasizes that. And I think something's also to be said about the role of women in Cossack society, because the Cossacks being a more semi-nomadic group, definitely being more on foot, and being in Eastern Europe, it definitely sets apart themselves more than their Western sort of counterparts. And I think I do need to kind of break that down just a little bit for people who are unaware of the sort of divide going on there. So technologically, Eastern Europe, for many centuries, basically following the fall of the Roman Empire, has sort of lagged behind the West. And in the West, there was more of a movement for the separate sphere sort of theory, where women were relegated to more like house cleaning jobs and in the kitchen. But in Eastern Europe, in Poland and Russia, things were different. Women were always expected, like, basically what they were before the Industrial Revolution, before all of that. They were expected as farmhands, the same. It's not like they were treated the same, but they were basically treated the same as men on the fields if they were peasants. And it's an important distinction to make that the Cossacks are not peasants. They're very different, and they do make that pretty clear, but they still do retain the sort of subsistence sort of farming, and in that case, you can't really afford to have women just working in the kitchen or doing, the jobs that the men don't want to do. Everyone's kind of got to put in the effort. That's not to say that sexism doesn't exist at this time. It most definitely does. But in Eastern Europe, it was more about, at the end of the day, someone's got to bridle up the horses, someone has to get all the crops together, and I think that's sort of something that we see more in Eastern Europe than we do in Western Europe, at least broadly speaking. And especially at this time, it's, I think, 1910 at this time, and so on the farm, everyone is sort of equal. Everyone does the same amount of footing for jobs, at least in that. So there is some egalitarianism on the farm, on like working like this in Eastern Europe, but it's not really comparable to sort of the egalitarianism we think of today in Western society. So the next scene cuts to Piotra and Stepan making their walk from Tatarsk to the training camp, which is about 40 miles. And there they meet a Kalmyk named Fyodot, or at least he's part Kalmyk, is what they say. Then Krestonia and some others while they're over there as well. And so they're in the wagon at the moment, and they're just all sort of sitting in there. They're not at the training camp yet, but it cuts to them sort of singing songs, and Stepan's a little reluctant to do so, but eventually he gives in. And there's a little song that they sing while they're in the wagon. So eventually they get to a stopping point, and it's about nighttime. They're cooking some food. They're over the fire, and Krestonia tells the story about, when I was younger, my father, who's now dead, we were looking for treasure, and there was this, rumored treasure to be in this one area, which was in the Common Land, and so he mentioned that, well, no one can stop us from digging up the Common Land except for the Ataman, who's the local, who's, I guess, the municipal leader of the region, and so they start digging, and at first they're kind of like, there's no way that there's going to be something, but then they dig something up, and it seems to be like this plate, and so once they take the plate out, they mention that there's just this shiny, sort of moonlight-esque sort of thing coming out, and they're so excited, like, we finally found it, we got this treasure, let's go. And so once they pull it out, they look up, and then they see that, in fact, the municipal leader, the Ataman, actually did come, and he said, who gave you guys permission to do this? And they didn't really have an excuse, so they were sent to court. And so, before they were digging the treasure, the father did say that, if we ever find the treasure, I'll build a fine church. And I think it's implied that he's going to build a church with the materials built in the treasure. But since he finally got to the treasure, he found it, just like he said, but then the Ataman found him, and then he got sent to court, and then he's no longer, he doesn't have that treasure in his hand. The people around in the campfire ask, like, did the father ever build that church? And they're like, and Kristonia's just like, with what materials would he build it? Like, coal? And so basically the entire campfire, everyone around the campfire is laughing about it, but Kristonia doesn't really understand what they're laughing about. And I kind of don't understand what they're laughing about, to be honest. Maybe I just got a weird translation. But yeah, that's pretty much the story. So that was a pretty funny scene, but after that, of course, we get a really, really depressing scene, which is basically the backstory of Aksinia, basically how she got into her situation. It's already hinted at that she does not feel satisfied in her marriage to Stepan, but in this one we really get a glimpse into her backstory, and oh boy, it's pretty dark. So I guess I'm gonna have to give a disclaimer or whatever, but like, you know how it is. This is, you know how Russian novels are. They're not the happiest. So when Aksinia was 17, her father did some stuff to her that I'm not allowed to say on YouTube, and then she said, I hate how they censor stuff on YouTube. I'll unalive you if you breathe a word, but if you keep quiet, I'll buy you a plush jacket and gaiters with galoshes. Remember, I'll unalive you if you... And then it cuts off there. And so after that, Aksinia runs back to her house, and she's basically crying, and she basically tells the entire story to her mother and brother, and the brother is so mad that he basically gets on a horse. He goes all the way over to the army camp that the father is stationed at, and he beats him on the head with an iron rod and kills him. And that's basically a year before the matchmakers come and try to marry her off. And so Aksinia gets married to Stepan, and so it's kind of just like, it's not really out of love or anything. I don't even think Aksinia knew Stepan before they got married. But basically when Aksinia moves into Stepan's household, she's basically told by mother-in-law, like, you know, you're married to Stepan not because, like, he likes you or anything, not out of love, but we need an extra hand on the field, and we want you to do that. So basically, she's just tasked with doing all this hard labor, and Stepan is also an extremely abusive husband, does a lot of terrible things to her. It's absolutely awful, and he's like the archetype of like a deadbeat father, deadbeat husband, or whatever. It's pretty bad, and it's pretty bad, and it's a Russian book. It's typical. I don't really know. And so the mother-in-law eventually dies, but before she dies, she has a child who dies within a year, and so we just get this absolutely harrowing tale of Aksinia's backstory. There's a lot of trauma involved. There's a lot of abuse involved. It's absolutely terrible. And then at the end of this, you get this description, basically up till now when she meets Gregor, and it says, and when Gregor Milokhov crossed Aksinia's path, she realized with terror that she was attracted to the swarthy youngster. But later in the passage, we see that Gregor actually really does like Aksinia, even so, and Aksinia realizes for the first time that this is actually the first happiness that she's actually really felt in love with someone, basically not in a place where she's kind of forced to, like in the case with Stepan, not in a place where it's forced, like with her father, and so it's a little uplifting, but we can also see that it's also not only illegal, but it's technically like not allowed as well, because she's already married, and the whole village basically looks down on that, even Gregor's father. And so, at the end of the chapter, we get this description where we don't really, where we can see that Aksinia is very conflicted about how she feels with Gregor, and it basically reads, "She was frightened by the new feeling which filled her, and in her thoughts she went gropingly, cautiously, as though crossing the dawn over the broken ice of March. After seeing Stepan off to camp, she decided to see Gregor as little as possible. After the fishing expedition, her decision was still further strengthened." And I think in this decision, we can sort of see not only is it sort of a cautionary thing where she knows that what she's doing is, in likelihood wrong because of she already has the husband, but also out of safety because she doesn't want Stepan to get more angrier than he already is. But also, I think more importantly is I think all of the trauma and all of the ghosts haunting her are telling her to not pursue this because it is a good feeling, and all that she's ever felt is basically the opposite of that. And so I think it's very tragic that we get this sort of thing. Also, we get this very beautiful simile, as if going through with this new feeling is like crossing the dawn over the broken march of ice. And so I think that's very significant, not only because we get this, image of walking over a frozen river that's bound to break at any second, but also if we take the sort of idea that the Dawn River is supposed to be this idea of safety, of security, that it's always going to be there even if there's war and hardship, that if the fear is falling into the dawn over this broken ice, then we can interpret this as seeing that maybe Aksinia's safety is really the problem. Maybe what she perceives as safety, all this trauma, all of this hardship, maybe what she perceives as normal is really not normal. So I really think it's a beautiful simile that we have going on here. So yeah, that was chapter 3 of And Quiet Flows the Dawn. Most of it was pretty much a narrative story up until the end, where it goes into the traumatic backstory of Aksinia, and I think it really gives us a good glimpse into who the characters actually are personally. And I think that's very important as what we'll see. We can definitely see that this story is definitely setting up the main characters as Aksinia and Gregor, and I think so far we have a pretty solid backstory. Definitely more of the Russian style that I was expecting, especially with the more depressing details about things that are happening. And I believe that there will be more to come. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed reading it. And stay tuned for chapter 4. Goodbye.